So, pleasure to be here. I only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to briefly discuss some of the challenges and opportunities within the Internet of Things. And I think it's important because today everybody wants to be interconnected, and we have a problem with hyperconnectivity, and there are just some serious challenges that we, as a people, as government, we don't really think about. All right, so what is the Internet of Things? The Internet of Things are devices, you think about Bluetooth, RFID, radio frequency identification. All these items are interconnected, right? So that is what Internet of Things is. And I'm just gonna give some of the general scenarios so you can see just how they come into play. So right now you have Industry 4.0. So countries like Japan, Germany, United States are pushing towards Industrial 4.0. What this means in manufacturing floors that they'll be able to get a lot of information via technology, mainly things that are internet enabled. So when you think about IoT manufacturing, you think about everything from the actual customer, that was happening on the actual floor, to suppliers, so you're thinking about the entire supply chain life cycle. And with all that, there are a lot of particular parts in the system that are not secure at all. Cybersecurity is one of our biggest issues. When you think about this environment, all the different things that could happen or go wrong. You think about what happened with Stuxnet and Flame with the Iranian, with the centrifuge and whatnot, and how they were able to find out the actual device that was used for making, propelling them as a nuclear power, finding out that it was Siemens VDO, finding out the actual supplier, getting the item in to actually mess up the particular device and stuff like that. So here you think about the actual trucks. So a lot of the actual vehicles have GPS navigation. So this is something that you can easily alter, and you can actually change routes. You can actually find out the routes and figure out how individuals are moving and stuff like that. You can actually find the makeup of the actual particular product. So when a lot of people think about intellectual property and us as a country, you can find out exactly how particular products are being made and developed to include who is supplying those particular parts of the actual product. Now, maybe the majority of us have or don't have kids, but out of everything in my life I've done, raising children has been the hardest thing. And so when we think about our home network and we think about all these internet devices, especially internet-enabled devices and Bluetooth, we have to really look and think about the serious concerns that we have at our house. So I have 3 little kids, and the hardest part of my morning was having them brush their teeth. They would not brush their teeth. So I was like, this is not gonna work. I can't be late to work every day using it my excuse. So we actually have a Bluetooth-enabled toothbrush. So the kids all have mobile devices. They have a Bluetooth-enabled toothbrush, and so when they brush their teeth, the actual monster, the tooth in the monster gets clean. And so when they're done brushing their teeth properly, the monster has clean teeth. But what that means is these are extra internet-enabled devices on my home network that are unsecure. So they have their own mobile device, they have a tablet, they have iPhone and stuff like that. Then they have these toothbrushes that are Bluetooth-enabled, and these are just the kids. And so for myself, I don't cook. I spent time watching the Food Network, and it's all been bad. So to prepare myself as a better parent and husband, I bought a Bluetooth-enabled device to help me, flip the meat and stuff like that. I was like, oh, flip the meat, Mo. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna flip the meat now. But again, that is not secure, because a lot of that technology is embedded, and there's no real way of updating security policies on these technologies. Now, all these are actually, they're on my home network. It goes to my home router, but a lot of people don't update their home router. They may have changed the default password, but they're not putting in patches for their router and stuff like that. So again, creates an entire system, an interconnected system where there are lots of vulnerabilities, and you only need one to actually get into a system. There's a tool on Kali Linux that you can use to actually crack Wi-Fi. So you can actually intercept the Wi-Fi and then crack the hash password. It takes maybe like 2-3 hours to do that. So again, an issue. And then once you're on the network, you can run tools like Wireshark and stuff like that, understand network traffic, and then behaviors of any internet-enabled device within that home. BOD culture, this is bring your own device to work. A lot of organizations are allowing employees to bring their own devices, right? Unless you're in the federal government will actually make sure that your device is labeled appropriately. unclassified, secret, top secret information, what your device is being used for, a number of actual federal institutions will not allow you to actually bring your device into the organization. You'll check in through security, they'll have a box and say, all right, well, sir, leave your device here. But a lot of companies, especially my institution, anybody can bring their mobile device. We don't stop anyone. You have your mobile phone, who cares? You bring your mobile phone. You're listening to the lecture, you're taking pictures, you're doing all this stuff, there's no problem. If you're working in one of our labs, now we stop some of the people from bringing in devices to the labs, but a lot of the research labs, people will bring the mobile device into. With mobile devices, there is so much stuff or intelligence you can gather. If you take a photo, there's tons of metadata. The metadata gives latitude, longitude coordinates. It tells about the actual camera of the device that was used, and if you do a generic search on the camera that is found in the metadata, it will tell you the actual devices that this camera is actually installed on. Again, a lot of people do not update their security posture for the mobile devices. All one has to do is Google generic security issues that are found with the device, and then from there start planning attacks and stuff like that. The other issue with BYOD is also there are viruses that affect different platforms. So you may have a virus on your mobile device and it's not meant to affect your mobile device, but when you connect it or sync it with your actual desktop or laptop, now it's going to infect that system. The majority of the users in this country are using Windows and Mac, right? So how many Windows users in the audience? Oh, good Lord, okay. I'm a Linux user. I've used Linux for just years. I'm an avid Linux user. But so when people write viruses and malicious software, it targets Windows, and then Mac, and then Linux. And it's all because of the way that, I guess you can call it, security rings are set up in terms of actually giving super user or root access to the actual system for an actual virus or malware to work. So with a lot of the BOD devices, there may be actual malware written that you may have downloaded on your Android device, but it doesn't actually start moving or working until it it touches your Windows system. So that's something as well. Also, in terms of getting an email that says, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I'll give an example. I got actual phishing and these emails, I call them they're like Nigerian 419 scams. These are scams like, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince. Not as bad, but it was from an email that the individuals pretending to be my boss, right? It was like, hey, Maurice, we need X, Y, and Z. Now, I was rushing because I was in a meeting, and so I was like, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? I have a particular birthday coming up, and I'll reimburse you after you show me the receipt. Now, I'm in a meeting, and then I look at the message really quick, and I was like, oh, you call me Maurice. I go by my nickname. I go by Mo. So if someone calls me Maurice, we have a real formal relationship. It's like, okay, well, we're not formal, so why is he calling me Maurice? It's like, let me inspect the link. And on your mobile device, it's difficult to do that. On your computer, just right-click, inspect link. But on your mobile device, it's really difficult to do it. You can't see it based upon the screen of the size of your screen. So when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is it's a Gmail account. It's not an IIT.edu account. And the person's email address is, it is not a real address. I did respond. I did tell them I would send them the gift cards, but I said I'm going to send in the zip file, and you'll have to unzip the file. Now, the file would have a lot of viruses and malicious software, so hopefully it wasn't too bad. But I said, the file resolution is really big of the gift cards I took with the receipts. Please unzip it, and sorry for taking so long. All right. So Internet of Everything. Now, this is interesting. So we talk about Internet of Things here, but Internet of Everything is anything that's not Internet connected or Internet enabled. So Internet of Everything, Gartner did a report, and they said there's 99% of devices are not connected to the Internet. And so Internet of Everything deals with data, people, processes, and things. But with Internet of Everything, what they want to do is connect anything and everything to the Internet. There's a conference that happens in Austin, Texas called Body Hack or whatever. So these deal with people that do body modifications, like putting RFIDs in their arm. They want to track constantly. It's like a Fitbit on steroids, but everything's embedded in them. And so people actually do this. And so what Internet of Everything looks at is actually connecting anything and everything to the Internet. Now, the problem with this is not the ability to actually do something like this, but it's the ability to secure it. Right? Just because you can have this technology doesn't mean you should put it out there. So when we think about everything that's gone on in this country, and we think about internet-enabled warfare, do we want to create more avenues for an attacker to take advantage of us? And that would be something what Internet Everything does. It sounds great having the data that would be available to us and what we could do with it, but also you have to think about what your adversary would do as well. When I was in Russia for my first Fulbright, I was working with South Ural State University in Chelyabinsk, Russia, north of Kazakhstan, and we were doing a scenario on data science. How could you use data science and math for business solutions, right? So we were going through a particular exercise, and we needed access to data. So just use data.gov, right? This is several years ago. And so you're blocked from accessing those US government sites in Russia. So all the students were like, oh, no problem. Everybody just pulled the VPN, and then they were able to get the data. So when you think about the sophistication that individuals have in other countries as it relates to technology, we really have to think about, is this something that we want to leap forward or sprint forward until we have everything secured? So don't have much time, but there's a ton of processes and regulations. You have the risk management framework, which is the NIST Special Publication 853. You have HIPAA, you have high trust, you have common criteria, you have the ISO process for system security engineering, also for common criteria. The problem is there's tons of processes that are available, but there's nothing being mandated for definitely city and state government and just commercial. Even healthcare, you have high trust, and high trust is like a mix-up and a mash of NIST controls with their own controls, and a lot of these controls overlap, and they really don't solve anything. 70% of the applications are vulnerable. 70% of applications are vulnerable. I think now it's like 80%. So the application layer is the most vulnerable layer when you deal with security. And so the issue with that is we have spent so much time securing the network. So routers, firewalls, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, but we just really have crappy software. So for those that study computer science, IT, they learn how to make great software, they learn about quality, but quality doesn't equal security. And so that's all this particular slide addresses. So there's a group called the Open Web Application Security Project, and they address things like that. All right, don't have time for that. Quickly, we have over 13,000 openings as of this morning, 2 a.m. in Chicago for cybersecurity. Over 13,000. I think it's like 13,028. And then over 11,000 of those jobs, I think 11,200 are here in Chicago alone. These are all the openings that we have here. So as we talk about Internet of Things and Internet of Everything and trying to make it use this technology to reshape our city, we don't have the manpower to secure it. So when you think about universities that can actually do this, I'll give a prime example. These are all the schools that are accredited by the National Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security for cybersecurity. These are basically the creme de la creme in our state. We have approximately 310 institutions of higher learning. And then the universities that offer 40 degrees and above I think it's about 116 in the state of Illinois. These are the Illinois that are compliant with the federal government for cybersecurity. This is an issue. There's tons of research available. Our keynote, he talked about a number of good things. The problem is with the research available, it doesn't really translate to the common person, right? So in academia, we always joke because we have research, we do all this great fine and dandy stuff, but in terms of the actual regular, Joe, they don't know what it is. So they're like, oh yeah, you know what, we're doing research in OSINT. Like, okay, well, what is OSINT? Open source intelligence. Okay, what does that mean? And so that becomes a big deal. So we spend all this money on research projects, theoretical, some of it's applied, but actually, I won't say dumbing it down, but translating that to the common person so they can actually apply that. In my class right now, I have a number of projects going on. One's actually an open source intelligence project where students are actually developing a GUI that's going to have two applications. It'll connect to two applications. It'll be like a web crawler. It'll be Facebook API, Twitter API, not LinkedIn API because they cancel your account. And I told the students they need it for a job. But what they'll do is they'll actually be able to pull all the data from there and analyze that. So they'll be able to go to Twitter and say, all right, we're going to pull tweets on some particular domestic terrorism event. So they'll pull those tweets, they'll pull the picture, they'll analyze that metadata, and then I'll run it with other tools. And so when you think about IoT, a lot of these particular items, they have their own special, unique address. Now, if you use tools like MyTago and you have it registered like on a public network, it will come up there. So you can actually see who registered a device, see that person, see associate email addresses, and we're having students do all that, but they're building their own app to do that rather than use one of these expensive paid apps. My other class, System Security Engineering, what the students are doing, they are actually building an offensive security solution at an affordable cost. So they're basically putting IoT devices on remote control cars, cheap UAVs, mobile devices, and using that to create a tactical offensive security environment. And so they're doing that, but hopefully they're also going to learn defensive stuff as well, so not just creating criminals. But as we have 36 seconds left, at our institution, we've been ranked, I think, the best in the state for IT and cybersecurity. It sounds good, but it's actually horrible because at our graduate students, 75% of my graduate students for our cybersecurity and IT are international. They're foreigners. India, China, Spain, France. And so we're accredited by the NSA, but these students can't go work for the federal government, right? So in terms of the 11,000 jobs we have open here in Chicago, my students can't do any of the federal work. So that's Department of Defense, that's Department of Treasury, any of these jobs that need people really bad. And so that becomes the issue in terms of changing culture and really instilling, a different environment within our children to do security. All right, so I may have time for a question, but otherwise, here is my contact information. I'm here locally, so you can always feel free to ask me questions, anything about research, all this stuff's available. But I think I can take maybe one question before I'm booted off the stage. Any questions? Okay, we're just taking pictures. All right, I guess I'll head off.